guys, so today I'm going to be doing a vlog style video and like an overall thoughts and review type of discussion at the end on the book that I was so excited to read. Like, this was my most anticipated read for like an entire year. Cassian is one of my favorite characters, and it is A Court of Silver Flames. I'm sure a lot of you guys are feeling the same way about this book as I am, but I am so excited to talk about this with you guys. So in this video, I just want to say really quick, in this vlog, I made this vlog with spoilers in it intentionally, and so when you see me vlogging, I'm not going to explain to you like what's happening in the story, because I'm going to assume during the vlog that you guys have already read this, because I don't know why you guys would want to watch a spoiler video on a book you haven't read yet. So I'm not going to explain like what's happening in the book, because that's one thing I don't like in spoilery videos, is when the person is telling me what the story is about, because I already know what the story is about. Let's go ahead and just jump into the vlog footage. This is just me reading the book and my thoughts and all of that kind of thing, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay guys, so I'm going to vlog me reading A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I've been so excited for this book, you have no flippin' idea. Okay, Cassian for one is my favorite character in the series. This is like one of my favorite series of all time, and I'm just so excited, you have no idea. So I'm going to vlog it, but can I tell you a little story first? I ordered this book on Barnes & Noble, a signed edition, and it is not going to be here for like a week. And I'm like, no, I cannot wait a week to read this book. So I just went to my local bookstore and I bought a second copy of this book so I could read it on time. Like, it was really affecting my mood. And every day that went by that I was not receiving the book in the mail, I was getting angrier and angrier. So this book right here is the best pointless $22 I've ever spent. And I'm not gonna apologize for it. So now I have 2 copies of this book, but I don't even care. So we're going to go ahead and start. I'm so excited. I have seen pretty good things so far. I think the first actual star rating I've seen on Goodreads is 4 stars. So we'll see. I have a feeling it's gonna be 5, but we'll see. So I'm about to go to bed, but one thing that I can say so far, I'm on page like 60 now, is she's doing a really good job at reminding us kind of what happened in the last books. I didn't get to do a reread, so I just did like a overview of A Court of Wings and Ruin to kind of like refresh my memory. But she's doing a really good job at like refreshing my memory and like reminding me of some of the important things that happened. And I'm just kind of marking them with my orange tabs, which is what I usually do, but okay, you guys, so I'm about 170 pages into A Court of Silver Flames, and I kind of want to talk about some of my thoughts really quick, because I have some thoughts right now, and I kind of wanted to talk about them because I think this is a big discussion in the fandom right now, and just in general in the book community. Now, one thing that I personally love in books is how everybody can get something different out of them, right? Like, one person can like a character, one person can dislike a character, one person can think, people can think different ways about different scenarios in books. It's good that authors allow readers that freedom to make their own judgments about characters, the decisions they make, and whether or not what they're doing is good, bad, whatever. That's why I try to stay kind of far away from the this is problematic issue, because I don't think necessarily problematic things in books is a bad thing, because I think it helps readers and it allows readers to think for themselves and have discussions. And it would be boring if every character was good and made perfect decisions all the time. That's what I think. However, I do want to talk about my feelings on something in this book, because this is a point of like controversy within the A Court of Thorns and Roses fandom. Do you like Nesta or do you not like Nesta? And there's 2 different parties. Now with this, I was like, okay, I'm one of the people that don't really like Nesta. I've never really liked Nesta that much. And a lot of people get frustrated with people that don't like Nesta, because they're like, okay, Nesta has had a lot of trauma, and she, you know, has been through so much, and she's in like a deep state of depression, and, you know, you need to cut her some slack, right? Which I totally agree. And one thing that I can like definitely praise Sarah J. Maas on in this book is her representation for mental illness. I think that she has done an amazing job in this book series at showing what mental illness can look like instead of telling. Like, she's done such a good job at showing PTSD, trauma. I think she even shows a little bit of derealization. In my opinion, she's showing a little bit of eating disorder tendencies. But here's my issue. This is the reason I don't like Nesta. is I think that Nesta is verbally abusive, and I think people are excusing her verbal abuse because she has trauma. And I don't think that's fair. Now, I didn't think about this too much before I read this book, but I came across a passage in this book that made me realize that Nesta is verbally abusive, and I don't think it's fair that we're, writing it off due to her trauma. So I'm gonna read you guys the passage that I found. And in this part of the book, Cassian was assigned a task from Rhys, and it's a task that he didn't feel very comfortable with. It was with politics and kind of scheming, and he's like, I'm not a people person, like I'm a warrior, like this is totally outside of my realm. And Cassian felt really uncomfortable doing this, and he felt confidence issues. So he's already feeling a lack of confidence and a little bit unsure of himself, and we've all felt like that before, right? So he says in this passage, he says, and he'd be damned if he gave her one more verbal weapon to wield against him, since she'd likely see right through him and realize he knew all of this political scheming and planning was far beyond his abilities. And I think what that's saying is Cassian was afraid to tell Nesta something because he was afraid that she was going to use it as a verbal weapon against him to make him essentially feel more self-conscious about something that he's already self-conscious of. And in my opinion, that is not a healthy relationship, to be afraid to tell somebody something because they're so verbally abusive that they might say something mean to you to bring you down farther. And that passage right there shows that Cassian was afraid of Nesta's words. And that to me is verbal abuse. And I think it's really important to realize, like, you would never say to a woman who said, my husband is abusing me, like physically abusing me. You wouldn't say, well, he's had a lot of trauma and he's gone through a lot and he's really depressed, so, it's okay. Like, no, just because somebody is traumatized or has PTSD does not give them the right to verbally abuse. And this is why I have strong feelings towards Nesta and why I have a really hard time liking her, and why I'm really protective of my boy Cassian, because he treats her so nicely most of the time, but she's just not nice to him. She's mean, and she says mean things to him. And that was proof right there that she's verbally abusive. And you can fight me on this, but I will not back down. I do want to kind of feel differently about Nesta by the end. I kind of want her to grow on me, and she probably will grow on me. I think Sarah J. Maas will be able to help Nesta grow on me, but right now I'm like so frustrated with her, and I just think it's a very interesting conversation because so many people feel so differently about her, and I would like to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you like her and why, or do you not like her and why? Can I just talk about my favorite reading snack for a second? So I love to eat pretzels, and there's a reason for this. You can eat them super duper slowly. Like, I just like nibble on them while I'm reading, and they don't make your fingers all sticky or like covered in powder or anything, so your fingers stay really, really clean, but you can eat them like really slow. Seriously, best reading snack ever. So it says, she, as in Nesta, watched the wall rise in his eyes, word after word, as if he waited for her to rip it down, rip him down. Make of that what you will, but it's true. Oily shame slithered through her. She'd done that, brought this level of defensiveness to him. Heaviness weighed on her, started gnawing at her insides. So I feel like it's kind of finally showing that Nesta understands that the things that she's saying to him, has made him, feel bad about himself, rip him down, and that she realizes that her words actually hurt. Also, can we talk about the House of Wind? For some reason, I don't remember the House of Wind having like enchanted powers where it can like conjure up food and stuff. I don't know, maybe I just have a bad memory, but I'm curious about this house. I feel like it's gonna come into play later in the story. Okay, we have another good line here of her kind of realizing her shortcomings. It says, she'd barely been able to speak to Cassian for the rest of their lesson, unable to stop thinking of how he'd put up a wall without her so much as saying a word, anticipating that she would go after him, assuming that she was so awful she couldn't have a normal conversation, that she'd mock him about his mother and their pain. Like, I think Nesta's finally realizing that, like, she's not being very nice and that Cassian is, like, afraid of her words. So that's a good thing. Good for Nesta for finally realizing it. You guys, I'm so happy to see this. So it says, he glanced at her again, and she could tell he was bracing for her venom. Monster. She was a monster. The knowledge cut and it sliced deep. She said, hoping to let him see she wouldn't pry into his business just to hurt him. Like, she's finally getting it, and I love it. I love to see this. It makes me much more happy. Like, I knew this was gonna happen eventually in the book, but just, I was waiting for it to happen because, you know, at the beginning, it was just so frustrating to see Nesta being so verbally abusive to Cassian and pretty much everyone, and now she's kind of starting to understand, and I think that that's such growth, and I love it. You guys, the sexual tension, it's finally here. It's what I've been waiting for. Almost 200 pages in, and now we're finally getting it. I just finished the part, like their first kind of like hookup scene, and I'm not cringing, but I feel so bad for Cassian in a weird way, like how he's like, oh my god, how did I let that happen? You know what I mean? Like, he'd been waiting for that moment for so long, and then he let that happen, and I'm like, oh my god. Like, I just feel like the guilt that he would feel, you know, like, how did I let that happen? But honestly, I like that she did that. I think it's interesting seeing that play out like that, and like seeing like what's going to come next, you know what I mean? And like how she's going to, I'm just interested to see how Cassian ends up handling that. I don't know, I just think it's interesting that she decided to play it out like that. What do you guys think? Also, I'm really enjoying seeing Nesta's arc. Like, I kind of feel like things are kind of coming around with her, and like she's slowly seeing like issues. And I also think it's interesting to like watching Cassian like stick by her and like kind of fight for her and like not giving up on her. Like, I think that's really endearing, and I think that's part of the reason why we like the series so much. It's like this really, really loyal aspect to the like males in this book, like Rhys, Azriel, and Cassian. They're so loyal, and it just comes out very strongly with the like guys she wrote in this book. And I just love how loyal like Cassian is to Nesta, even though she's like a huge bitch and not very nice to him. I think that's what is like such an addicting quality to this type of thing, because like everybody wants like that really loyal man, you know, that like fights for them. And that's why it's like just so satisfying, I guess. But it's interesting, like how I was talking about how she is kind of like verbally abusive or whatever. Like, when would you guys consider it to be problematic for Cassian just to put up with her and like have her just keep being mean to him over and over and over and over? Like, when is it bad to show that you should stay with somebody who's like that to you? Does that make sense? So that's an interesting conversation to have as well. Like, is it showing that you should stay with somebody that's verbally abusing you? Or should you power through it? Should you never give up on them? I just think it's an interesting conversation to have, but I really like to see, I'm really enjoying seeing this play out and kind of seeing like how their relationship is developing and like forming and stuff like that. It's just good. It's just satisfying. You guys, I'm living for this. Cassian grinned and said to Azriel, "We're gonna be uncles." Farrah groaned, "Mother help this child." Is that just not everything? It's just like all I wanted. Okay guys, sorry it's so dark. I haven't updated in a while, and I'm loving everything so far, but I had to come on here and mention the one thing that I'm not enjoying in this book, and that's the training scenes. They're not all bad, to be honest, but like I just feel like they're getting a little bit repetitive. Like, I don't really care that much about like training and like fighting, and I feel like they're like constantly just like coming up, and they're just like training and talking and training and talking and training and talking. And that's like the only thing that's bothering me right now, is the amount of training scenes. Does anybody else feel that way? So I'm at the part where Amren is ripping Nesta a new one because Nesta got pissed and ran down the stairs to confront Amren. And Amren is like putting her in her place, and I am loving it. Finally, someone talks some sense into Nesta. Okay, you guys, I am 484 pages in. And like I said, I just read the part where Amren like rips Nesta a new one, which was amazing. But I'm still annoyed by Nesta. Like, she's still pissing me off. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand Nesta in like a different way than I did before. Like, I definitely feel like I can understand Nesta, and there's times in this book that I like Nesta and I feel like I can understand her and I sympathize with her and stuff like that. And there's definitely elements to Nesta that I don't hate, but man, she's still so rude. Like, she's such a bitch and I can't handle it. Like, the things that she says, and I'm like, freaking learn how to hold your tongue. Like, I don't know, she just gets on my nerves. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys feel the same at all with her? Like, you don't hate her, but there's moments where you're just like, God, like, get a hold of yourself, lady. Guys, finally, I've been waiting this whole book. Based upon scent alone, I would say you two are ... mates. You guys, I found a future ship, and it's gonna be a good one. So it's Emery, Nesta's friend Emery. It says, I wanted to see where you work, Emery said, eyes upon Clotho and Moore a level above. She sighed, nodding towards Moore. I always forget how beautiful she is. She never comes to Windhaven these days. Nesta could have sworn pink stole over Emery's brown cheeks. I mean, does that not scream ship to you? So I just read the scene with Balthazar, and can we just bring Balthazar back? Like, can Balthazar be a main character? Like, he needs to be in the next books, because I love him. And if Cassian finds out that he helped Nesta, I don't know. I feel like we need Balthazar. Balthazar is a good character. This is the line that got me. Blue tab is the sad tab. That's the line right there. Are my eyes glazed over? Can you see it? And now I'm going to slit your pretty little throat. What? That caught me off guard. I was like, yes, it's over, it's over. No, not over. Okay, so if we're gonna be nitpicky here, Nesta said that Cassian couldn't see her for a week, right? So 7 days. And this blood rite is 5 days, right? Am I right on that? 5 days? And she said, you can't see me or be close to me for 7 days unless I speak to you first. So technically Cassian is breaking that deal, is that what you call it? The deal that she made with him to not talk to her or whatever. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't, like, get close to her. So how is he, even though he's under the queen's spell, how could he do that? Because of the deal that she made with him. You know what I'm saying? Because a week is technically 7 days and the blood rite is like 5 days. So technically that doesn't make sense. That's a plot hole. He shouldn't be able to hold Nesta or kill her or get close to her. Okay, so for my final thoughts on A Court of Silver Flames. So this book, I loved. I loved the overall message and the overall feel of this book. I loved everything about what Sarah J. Maas did with this book and like why she wrote it. You could definitely tell that this is a very personal book to her. And she does mention a lot that this book is very personal to her. Like, there's a lot of herself reflected in Nesta in this book. It's not her exact story or anything, but you can tell that Sarah J. Maas definitely has gone through some hard times, and she has been able to write Nesta in a own voices type of way, I feel like, a little bit, which I think is really, really great. This book has some of the best mental illness representation I think I've ever read in my entire life. If you have ever struggled with PTSD or depression, anxiety, derealization, anything like that, I think that this is a must read for you because it is so well done and it is so amazing to see a character struggle so deeply with so much trauma and see her kind of climb out of that hole in a very realistic way. It's not easy for her, and it's not something that happens overnight and she falls and then she gets back up and then she falls and then she gets back up. It's a very real depiction of what it feels like to struggle out of a depression or a funk, and I think it really shows that it's not easy and it's realistic in that way, because I think that, you know, if you've ever struggled with anything difficult, you know that like it feels like absolutely impossible sometimes. And I think that Sarah J. Maas showed that so well in this book with Nesta, and I think that's like such an amazing thing, and I think that we need to praise Sarah J Maas for this book because I think it's so freaking well done. And that's one thing that I loved about this, and why I gave it like 5 stars is because I think the overall message and just watching the growth in Nesta is just super, super good. One thing that I felt was a little bit of an issue with this book, like the only thing I had a hard time with and kind of struggled with this, and I tend to feel this way with Sarah J Maas, even though she's one of my all-time favorite authors, I think she'll always be one of my favorite authors, she is so winded sometimes, and I felt like this with Crescent City as well. She needs to edit down a little bit. Like there's definitely scenes in this where I'm just like, I'm bored. Like, for example, the training scenes, I kind of felt like we kept ending up in the training area, which is fine. Like I totally understand that it was needed because that was like a main thing in this book, was like the training and the Valkyries and all that kind of thing, and how that helped her grow and helped her meet her friends and stuff like that. But I kind of felt like every time we'd end up in that training ring, it was a very similar scenario. They kept doing the same things, kind of the same banter would happen, and I kind of felt like I didn't need that much training, and she maybe could have put some of those conversations in other areas of the book and stuff like that. I just kind of felt like some of the training scenes were kind of getting to me by like the midpoint in this book. This book could have gone through a little bit of an edit in that regard, make it a little bit shorter. This did not have to be, you know, 755 pages or something like that. I think that it could have been shortened up just a little bit. And even though I absolutely love Sarah J Maas and her characters and the way that she makes you feel towards her characters, I think the length of her books are a big part of that. But I do think that sometimes they get a little draggy. I think one of my favorite things about this book in general was Emery and Gwen, and seeing Nesta build the relationship that she had with Emery and Gwen throughout this story. Like, Sarah J Maas is an absolute pro at found families. She's so good at it. It's like her thing. She's just really, really, really good at that. And I love found family, and I loved seeing Nesta find her own family. She didn't feel like she had to jump right into the inner circle and make that her family. Like, she found her own friends and her own found family, and the relationship that they built was so awesome and so cool to see. And even though she did end up, you know, feeling like she was a part of the inner circle, she also felt like she had her own family that she could turn to, and their bond was so strong. And by the end, like, I absolutely loved it. Like, Gwen is probably one of my new favorite characters, which I have my theories on her, but I just absolutely loved seeing that, and I think that that was a huge aspect to Nesta's growth as well. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Why I think this book is so great is because Sarah J Maas did such a good job at showing that overcoming depression and overcoming PTSD and those really, really hard mental illnesses that we all struggle with sometimes comes from within. And I think that that was such an important aspect to this book. You know, like, you are not going to just get better by meeting a guy, right? No guy is going to make your issues better. Like, it has to come from within you. You have to take the steps to be a better person and to pull yourself out of this dark hole. And it's really, really hard sometimes, but it really showed Nesta find these little things throughout her life that really helped her and motivated her, you know, finding friends of her own and finding purpose and passion and forcing herself to do things that she didn't want to do. And yes, Cassian was a part of her growth, but he wasn't what made her better. She didn't just meet Cassian one day and then everything was fine, which I see a lot happen in books a lot of times. If somebody's going through a really hard time and then they meet a boy and everything's fine. And I feel like this was really good because it showed that yes, Cassian was supportive of her and he never kind of left her side and he always pushed her and helped her, but he wasn't the reason, like the sole reason she was able to pull herself out of her depression. It was her and the steps that she took, and I thought that was really great. And I also loved Nesta's ability to kind of look within herself and say, okay, my behavior to the people that I love and I care about is unacceptable, and she saw that and she really wanted to change that, and she did change it. And I think that that's amazing as well, because as you guys saw at the beginning of this video, I thought that Nesta was verbally abusive, and I still think that she was, but I think what happened is she realized that and she was willing to change that about herself, which I really liked as well. And can we talk about Cassian? Like, I love him. He's been my favorite character in the series since, like, I met him in A Court of Mist and Fury. I absolutely adore that man. He's my book boyfriend. I love him so much. He's such a little sweetheart. I could just die for him. He's so great. I love him. Another interesting conversation that I wanted to have too, though, is talking about Nesta and how, if you guys remember at the beginning of this video, I talked about how Nesta, you know, we were giving, or some people really liked Nesta because of her trauma that she was dealing with, and they were saying, you know, we have to give her the benefit of the doubt. She is the way that she is because of her trauma. She is the way that she is because of what she has been through, and she needs to work through it. She's very depressed and she's very down and all of that kind of thing. So if you feel that way towards Nesta and you want to give her kind of the benefit of the doubt and you want to be able to see her work through her issues, yes, she was verbally abusive and a very mean person, but if she got that kind of benefit of the doubt and kind of that free pass card to kind of work to be a better person, then I think that we need to give that to Tamlin as well. I feel like Tamlin and Nesta were both really bad in their own way, and they were really abusive in their own way, but clearly Tamlin, some of his abuse that he showed to Feyre at the beginning of this book happened because of his trauma. And if we're gonna give Nesta the benefit of the doubt and we're gonna let her work through some of her problems, then I think that we need to do that with Tamlin. If Sarah J. Maas, you know, obviously allows that. She might keep Tamlin as like a villain, but we can't hate him completely, because if we're gonna give Nesta a free card, then we need to give Tamlin one as well. One thing that I'm so excited to see, one of my theories, is I think that Emery and Moore are gonna be an item, and I cannot wait to see this happen. Like, there's some definite scenes in here where Emery's kind of checking out Moore and she kind of gets a little nervous around her and blushes and stuff like that. And I was wondering who Moore was going to end up with, because I knew that there was going to be some sort of sapphic romance in this series with Moore, but I didn't know who it was going to be with. And Emery, it's no doubt in my mind that Emery and Moore are going to end up together, because I don't know what else Sarah J. Maas would do for that. And it just makes sense. Like, they will definitely be a pair. And then my other theory is that Gwen and Azriel are going to end up together. I don't think Azriel and Elaine are going to end up together. I don't think that they're meant to be. In the Barnes & Noble edition, there's a chapter at the very end where it kind of talks about Azriel's shadows really singing with Gwen, and they're playful with Gwen, but with Elaine, they're not as much like that. And I kind of think that Azriel and Gwen are mates, but they just haven't realized it yet. I've also kind of thought about how Azriel and Elaine might kind of hook up a little bit. They might test the waters, but I think that they'll end up kind of saying, this isn't for me. They'll remain friends, and then they'll kind of move on to their respective mates. And because Elaine's mate is Lucien, I think that Elaine's actually going to end up with Lucien. And I think that it's going to be a really interesting storyline to see Elaine's feelings develop for Lucien, because she doesn't really like him right now, and that's obvious. She's kind of like keeping her distance from Lucien, and I think that it'll be a really interesting and cute, sweet storyline to see that relationship grow, because one thing that I did miss in Nesta and Cassian's story is the sweetness. Because Nesta is such a strong, like, brash character, I felt like the sensual and sexual aspect of their relationship was very strong, but there was definitely missing that sweetness. And one thing that I love in romance is sweetness. And I think that when we see Elaine and Lucien, if they end up together, I think if we see that whole story play out, it's going to be a very sweet romance, which I think is going to be cool, because Lucien is a sweet character in a way. Like, I can just see that element between Lucien and Elaine, which I would like to see. Another interesting thought is that somehow Elaine is going to end up in the spring court. And I kind of was thinking, okay, what if Elaine ended up with Tamlin? I mean, think about it. The flowers, the spring, the gardening, and all that kind of thing. But then I saw another really interesting thing. I would bet money on this. Gwen is Tamlin's daughter, because Gwen had mentioned that she was a baby of the right. And she, I think, said she was like 23 or something like that. But Tamlin was the only High Lord to be able to participate in the rite for like 25 years. And so it would only make sense that if she is a baby of the right, she would have to be Tamlin's daughter. So who her mother is, I don't know. But if she is Tamlin's daughter, I think that's going to make a really interesting plot line. And if Azriel and Gwen end up together, and Gwen is the only heir to the spring court, if Tamlin dies, would Gwen get the spring court? Because High Ladies are a thing now, right? So would Gwen get the spring court, and then Azriel would be the High Lord of the spring court? I mean, that's a theory. Another amazing theory that I saw, you guys. Now, I don't know all the details to this because I can't remember everything perfectly because I haven't read the past books too much, but I saw this theory, so I'm just going to repeat what the girl said. She said there's 3 mountains and 3 stars and 3 sisters. Feyre conquered Under the Mountain with Amarantha. Nesta conquered Ramiel, the peak of the mountain. So Elaine has to conquer the middle of the mountain, which is the prison. So in Elaine's book, she's going to have to conquer the prison. And it was really interesting because she said when Nesta was scrying for the harp, she said that she felt as if the harp was waiting on something. So whether that be Elaine or the prison, like the air in there was waiting on something. So is it waiting on Elaine for some sort of reason? Is Elaine gonna have to conquer the prison? I think that that's an amazing theory, and Elaine's gonna have to do some big thing just like Nesta did and just like Feyre did. So Elaine has a lot ahead of her, I think, and I think that it's a really, really, really interesting theory. And another interesting theory is Elaine actually turns evil. Like, people are saying that maybe Elaine was working with Koshi because she wanted her humanity back so she could go back to be with Grayson. And I think that this is really interesting because it did say in the book that Koshi and Brialyn or whatever had spies close to Nesta, but they didn't say who it was or who they were or anything like that. So if there was a spy close to Nesta, could it be Elaine? And does Elaine want her humanity back so she can be with Grayson? Because clearly Elaine might not be completely over Grayson. So overall, this book was great. Like I said, it was a little bit slow at times. I do feel like there was a little bit of pacing issues going on. And about midway through the book, I actually was like, am I gonna give this 4 stars? I may give this 4 stars, I'm not really sure. But in the end, I felt like the overall story, the overall vibe, like once everything comes together and you can kind of see the whole story as one, it's definitely a 5-star read. The end was amazing. The whole blood rite that the girls had to do and the Valkyrie thing was really, really fun to watch play out. Like, in the end, everything made this book 5 stars. Like, it was so good. And the way that Sarah J Maas weaves these stories is just fantastic. I just don't understand how a writer writes fantasy like this. Like, I don't get it. Like, how do you weave this story in your head? I don't know. But I thought this was really, really great, and I think that it might be one of my new favorites. And I think the reason why I love this book so much was because of Cassian. Because I just love him. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I'm probably forgetting to talk about a lot of things, but I don't want to make this video too long, but let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on this. If you guys have any theories, I tried to think of as many theories as I possibly could that I've heard. But yeah, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this and see what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in my next video.